come the regular season. He'll still be property of the Cincinnati Bengals.
All right, John, thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. It was a record-setting year for Brett Favre, and it almost wound up with a fairy tale trip to the Super Bowl in his final season. Led the Packers to a return to prominence. They won the NFC North, making it to the playoffs for the first time in 3 seasons. And with Favre's passing and the late-season emergence of Ryan Grant to spark the running game, the Packers were among the league's top offenses. So what did they do in the draft this year? Well, Todd McShay has the answer to that.
I don't think Brett Favre's retirement will reflect.
And Michael Clemens joins us now. Michael covers the Packers for 1250 AM WSSP in Milwaukee. Michael, what went right for the Packers last year?
Well, sure. It started off with Brett's phenomenal year. Brett Favre had 28 touchdown passes, a 95.7 passer rating for the season. One of his most accurate season in all his years in Green Bay. And he developed a chemistry early on with those young receivers like Greg Jennings. And then they added Ryan Grant. They picked him up for a 6th-round pick just after the roster reductions in September from the New York Giants. He got on the field in the second half of the season and was phenomenal. 956 yards, a strong defensive line performance, stopping runners like LaDainian Tomlinson, the Chiefs' Larry Johnson, and Adrian Peterson, and improved special teams play. They went from 22nd to 7th in their rankings. They scored the winning touchdown in the opener against the Eagles, a confidence builder for the youngest team in the NFL.
When you stop one game short of the Super Bowl, obviously not much went wrong, but what did go wrong for the Packers?
Well, in the first part of the season, they struggled with their running game the first half of the season, and they still don't really have an answer for a backup to Ryan Grant. They need to be more consistent in their run blocking, and I think the Packers are also wondering if they're, in fact, a cold-weather team. They beat the Seahawks in the snow in the divisional playoffs, but in the sub-zero attempts, they lost to the Bears on a very windy day in Chicago and to the Giants at Lambeau Field. And if they can't get a running game going in January, what's the point of home field advantage in Green Bay?
Yeah, it's a little late to start working on building a bubble there.
Exactly.
They really haven't added much this offseason in terms of players, but they did lose some key players. What do you think about their free agent moves so far?
Well, Packers GM Ted Thompson is always guarded in free agency. He just signed his first player this week, a linebacker from the Rams, Brandon Schiller, who's they got him away from the Cardinals. He was interested in going to Phoenix. But, Ted Thompson will focus on the draft. He'll pick up players released in September or teams willing to trade like they got with Ryan Grant. They traded their franchise player, defensive lineman Corey Williams, to Cleveland for a 2nd-round pick. But they built to the draft, undrafted free agents, and they've gone from 4-12 Ted Thompson's first year to 13-3 in the NFC Championship just 2 years later.
All right, so their 1st-round pick this year is number 30. A lot of underclassmen in this year's draft that add a lot of value so you can get a good player there. What do you think they'll do?
Well, I think they'll stay at 30. I don't think that he'll trade up. They'll take the best player that they think is available. They really stick to that model. But they may trade down one of their 2nd-round picks like the one they got from Cleveland, and they'll leave the draft weekend with as many as 10 to 12 players addressing the needs like Todd talked about, a tight end, running back, in the secondary.
Obviously, the biggest question mark is Aaron Rodgers and how he steps in at quarterback. Given that and given what we saw from them last year emerging as a young team, what do you expect from them this season?
Well, they're going to miss Brett Favre's experience the most. The head coach, Mike McCarthy, says there wasn't a defense that he had never seen. You couldn't fool Brett Favre. But Aaron Rodgers will step in. He's smart. He's had 3 years to prepare himself mentally and emotionally for the challenge to step in. Not replace, but to step in for Brett Favre. He's got a strong arm. He'll be conservative in his decisions. He'll protect the ball. He can run, though. A completely different style than Brett Favre in keeping a play alive. But right now, he's the only player they've got that's ever taken a snap in the NFL. So they need to, help him out in getting a backup, either what's left of free agency or in the draft. I think the Packers could go 9-7, maybe 10-6 with a tougher schedule. And even with a young quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, unless John Kidna gets more time in the pocket in Detroit, I think he'll probably be the best passer in the NFC North in his first full season.
All right, Michael Clemens from Sports Radio 1250 AM WSSP in Milwaukee with the latest on the Packers. Mike, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, and for more of the Packers, we welcome in Eric Allen once again to Football Friday.
Now they've got to be able to sort of build off of Adrian Peterson and Pat Williams and Kevin Williams.
Turns also had a couple more receiving touchdowns. And you think about it, Bernard Berrien, who was the leading receiver, only had 5 touchdowns. So that tells you the impact that Devin had on the team as far as field position and just scoring. I mean, they relied on him to win games for them sometimes.